All right. No one else sees the countdown but us. It's the beauty of editing. So Jay here is joined. Was kind enough to join me on a Sunday morning, a little Sunday morning, early afternoon conversation. We didn't get a chance to chat. Jay was working out, was wheeling and dealing during the live stream, so we didn't get a chance to chat. It turned out to be a still very good show, but I was still very curious about the Dallas show. So we kind of went back and forth a little bit on it, and Jay was setting up at the table kind of what we talked about prior to. And I've been very interested in seeing kind of the vibe going into it. Also because I'm doing my analysis and then I want to kind of do a comparison once we get to the expo. Because the expo is its own beast, different configuration, different stuff. But I've been at the expo, every one of them going back well over 20 years. So I have a pretty good gauge on, for me, it's an evolution over time. So I don't feel like the big drastic changes. For me, been a gradual thing. But it'll be interesting to see how it compares and how people react compared to what stuff like the Dallas show and those ones leading into it are acting like. So first of all, Jay, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me as a guest.
Absolutely. And I think it's the first time in a while that I've done one of these little sit downs. So it's just us chatting. We won't be making fun of Eric. Well, we can still do it. He just
We
won't be
can.
here to take it
Hey,
directly.
his hip's feeling better,
It
so
is.
that's good.
Yeah. His
I
supermarket
watched the
shopping
show.
skills are not. So I don't know if you caught that. It was beautiful. His mom was in the chat. So did you catch that piece of the live stream?
I heard that. I mean, I wasn't looking at the chat at the
Yeah.
time, so his mom literally came in
His
and
mom watches the
played.
show occasionally. Yes, she participates in the chat occasionally towards the beginning because then it gets later on. Obviously, then by all means she can click off. But apparently that is his mom, and apparently she asked him to go to the supermarket and get a turkey breast. And being Eric, he went there and asked him for turkey leg, and
This is
caused an
the
incident.
turkey leg.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and caused an incident and the whole thing. And we're just sitting there like, you can take notes. You can write down a note. You can just write it.
This is stuff you can't make up because
No,
it's so preposterous.
no, no.
Turkey legs, turkey breast.
It's
Yeah.
very difficult to believe that such a thing is possible. Except I watched Eric and Tim from Slapstrong get lost when we were all sitting there at dinner, like, where are those idiots? Like, was like, and they say, well, we thought it was another one. Why? Why would you drive all the way out there when it's like this one's closer to the damn show? Why would we go to a further one? Where the hell were you going? They took the wrong turn at Albuquerque, and they got there eventually.
Eventually.
That's what we were dealing with. It's like at that point, no, I'm sorry. I believe Eric's mom. I for one believe Eric's mom. She has no reason to lie on
She
these
placed
matters.
the order too,
Yeah, she
right?
has no
She
reason to
said,
lie on
"Go,
these
go
matters.
pick it up. It's waiting for you. Don't screw it up." And what did he do?
And what
Screwed
did
it
he do?
up.
Yeah. Well, I teased him. I'll tell you. Today on Instagram, he posted up a picture of like a Boston Bruin card, and then somebody posted a comment. And goes, "Well, after this, you can't make fun of like Carlos's shiny Griffey because he always complains about baseball all the time." And then he put his little comment in there, and I saw it, and then I replied back, and I go, "Funny you should mention that. I have studies that say that it's a 98% probability that baseball collectors, on average, don't screw up supermarket orders. True story."
Don't need to see the
98%,
data.
90% less
Yeah.
likely. The data doesn't lie. I have studies, man. I'd show them to you, but apparently we don't need to do that.
No. We can talk about it and we accept it.
Exactly.
So that's actually a good segue because I would say everything that I say is anecdotal,
Mm-hmm.
which we can look it up, and that just basically means it's based on my meager observations. But yeah, most of it, my comparison for Dallas compared to the first show that I went to and did it was in March, because I couldn't go in January for COVID issues,
Mm-hmm.
and then in this May, the main thing was trading was way up in terms of the ask, and I had more not sales opportunities, buying opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
People wanted to sell a lot of different things, and it ran the gamut. So I think you're going to see that at the expo. And you had mentioned before that you're going to help your friend who sets up.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested to see what comes across the table. I would say I saw two interesting things: a complete graded set of Batman Black Bat 66
Okay.
that was in low grade condition. We're talking range from two through five. And I saw an ungraded set of Little Rascals, which I didn't know anything about. I'd seen the cards kind of before, but I didn't know anything about them, so
Mm-hmm.
I passed them both of those. But
Yeah.
for the most part, it was modern.
Yeah.
Not much hockey. I did get offered a Gretzky Tops 4,
Mm-hmm.
for what I thought was a high price, because I'm like, first, I wouldn't buy a Gretzky card if it wasn't O-Pee-Chee.
Right.
Because I said that, that's what I traded in back in the 90s. Like, I'd stayed away from tops. So
Hmm.
why would I buy it now? And I thought the price was high. And I said, if I want a Gretzky card, I want better than four. I know four is probably pretty good, but a
Yeah,
tops
it's
four is like
yeah.
not
We made the
interesting.
joke. We made the joke some time ago, and actually a commenter on the live stream actually asked about it. You know, we joke about it on the stream that in Canada we use the Gretzky rookies doorstop because they were so common as dirt for a long time. And I'm going to reply back to the last one because they understand it's kind of we were making it very tongue in cheek, but they go like obviously not really a doorstop, but it's like was it really that common? It's like yeah, it really was. Like you'd see them all over at the expo. You would see hundreds of Gretzky rookies, hundreds, all over the place. They were not rare. I bought one of the ones that I bought for like $200 or $300, and it was the O-Pee-Chee, and I think it was like a 3 or 4. So like not unfair, like fine, but there reached a point once things really started to go crazy that the ones were pushing 1,000, and I was
Wow.
like, okay. Well, the problem is that I sold mine for like $500, $600 but before that, and I was like, well, if you guys had told me you were going to knock this all the way up, I could have probably made 2 or 3 grand in the damn thing. But such is the way. I had two of them at one point, and I don't even like that card. I went out of my way to avoid it, and I still ended up with two of them. To tell you how common as dirt the
Yeah.
things were, to put that in perspective. And it was funny you mentioned though that there's not much hockey in Dallas, which is what I've heard and what I understood. Although one buddy that I know from one of the discords went there. He is not morally opposed. He actually doesn't mind collecting some hockey and some Dallas Stars and stuff. But traditionally, I haven't heard too much there. He came across one Medano and Jamie Benn card from the Cup. So there's the two guys that I have personal collections of. There was a dual from Jamie Benn's rookie year. There was a dual patch autograph from the Cup out of 35. Those things dried up years ago. He was able to find one at the show, and he bought it for the princely sum of $60. I was like, "You son of a! If you don't need that anymore, just let me know." I was like,
Yeah,
I,
no,
I've been looking for that card for years. Like, of course it's in Dallas. That seems appropriate, but like, geez, come on.
yeah, what I had kind of observed is um, there probably I'd say 20%. This is just random cards,
Mhm.
but then for Dallas, it seems as if there are I wouldn't call them specialists because they specialize in those cards. I call them that they're concentrating their display in a
Mhm.
certain set of cards. Like for me, it's I try to do pre 1960 non-sports.
Mhm.
So that's not really a specialty. It's kind of a collection. And then there are people that do Marvel, a lot of Marvel.
Yeah.
I was surprised how much Marvel I saw. But there were a couple hockey people, right? So that's all they had, and then
Mhm.
obviously in graded hockey.
Mhm.
Compared to March, I'd say it seemed that there was more graded hockey there. And what I don't know, because I know hockey from when I used to buy stuff,
Mhm.
but the weird thing is there was a lot of SGC graded hockey, and I don't know why that is. And when I say hockey, I'm not talking about modern stuff. I'm talking about more of the vintage that I'm familiar with, which is the 80s and the 70s,
Mhm.
and then back into the Parkhurst days.
Yeah.
But I was surprised how much SGC stuff there was there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I assume it's just turnaround time and cost of grading
I would
is
say
what.
both those things. Yeah. When
Yeah.
PSA has started to have its basically PSA locked down for a bit, that opened the door for SGC. And then SGC got its own act together to the point that their turnaround time is strong and they've been able to maintain it. And that made it more viable. Just the fact that they were able to get stuff turned around pretty quick and that the price was reasonable, and it still is. I would say it's still very reasonable and the turnaround time is still very good. It made it more interesting, I think, for folks because right now, even now, at $50, you have to know what you're submitting. Like I have
Oh yeah.
maybe a group of about 7 or 8 cards that I'm going to take over to Brad at the expo to drop off for PSA Canada. Three of them are crackouts, but Eric will be pleased. Three of them are crackouts from BGS and BVG slabs.
BGS. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he'll be pleased. But yeah, one of them they completely mislabeled. That's a story. I'll tell you that one offline. But I've done it on the show, but I'll save it for later. But the rest of the cards are very select. They got to be cards that I'm comfortable with at the $50 price point to turn around and grade. Otherwise, you wait until the lower price point. SGC though is extremely viable because I know they're taking submissions. So if it was a vintage card under certain circumstances, that would be certainly viable. Like you can drop it off right at SGC, turn it around, and there you go. So it's just a matter of what you're trying to do. But we'll see. It's going to be an interesting cross section of different stuff. But some of the stuff that I'm sending in, it has to already be $100, a couple of $100 raw to then make it worth my while to even consider paying that amount. And it has to have potential. So I could see why SGC would be very popular. Now, let me kind of segue over into one of the things we were talking about just before I hit record. And that is, obviously, you set up the show, you have your specialty, which you just outlined and you talked about. There did seem to be a lot of trading at the show, is one thing you mentioned. So I'm going to ask you this question. Don't give specifics, obviously, it's a different thing. So for the most part, given the ratio of stuff you sold versus stuff you bought and stuff that came in, this is something I'm curious about because this is something I'm going to compare to the expo with some of the dealers that I know. So all in all, was it a profitable show for you, or was it simply the opportunity to buy that made it worthwhile? How did you feel was the value proposition for you as a dealer setting up?
So, and I don't know where you're located in terms of travel, right? So
Mhm.
you're going to have a hotel cost, right? So I have a
Absolutely.
flight cost, hotel cost,
Yes.
and then obviously you have your meals and then the number of tables. I'd say it was overall profitable.
Okay.
Going into Sunday, it was going to be not good because the sales weren't there, right?
Hmm.
You have to move a certain amount of items. And Sunday turned out to be really good because I sold things that I frankly didn't expect to sell.
Okay.
And that's the good thing about bringing a lot of stuff. But my costs are a little higher because I did 4 tables instead
Hmm.
of one or two, and then it's a time factor of being there for me. Like you value your time, and it's not that I want to get paid an hourly rate, but I want to either have a good time and meet interesting people,
Hmm.
which at times that worked, and at times it was like you're just doing nothing. So I would say overall profitable
Hmm.
and made some connections, for which that's why I didn't attend your show on Friday. That I was working on another deal,
Yeah.
and that was the basis of the show itself, which happened at the last show too. So
Hmm.
I think more things are done post show
Yep.
than during the show, and
Yep.
that's the importance of being there, because had I not been there, you don't meet that person. You're not meeting that person online. You're not
Yep.
meeting that person on eBay. You're not meeting that person in a forum. They need to see the things you have and then get interested in it, and then you have the converse. You continue the conversation from the show.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why I wanted to pose the question the way that I did because there's more value than just the specific table sales at the show. To your
Correct.
point, it can lay the groundwork for a deal outside the show. Another category that I know, and I know this is a big thing at the expo. I don't know if this is a thing in Dallas. I know that a lot of dealer to dealer deals during setup is a big thing at the expo
Yes.
traditionally because some of the dealers I know from history they'll do 50 to 60% of their business before the show even opens its doors. They'll do some massive deals because some dealers will come by and go, "Hey, I'll buy that." They don't clear out the table, but they'll buy like a chunk of some quality stuff. And all of a sudden, the show's already made and the doors haven't even opened. So for some of those guys, that's how they do. And then it becomes a bit of a buying show. Yes, they'll sell stuff, but then it becomes like, okay, let me buy some stuff that potentially could be moved in other avenues as well. Because there is arbitrage, there is dealer to dealer interactions. There is go to that table, that card's being sold probably underpriced compared to probably where it should be. They haven't updated their prices, they haven't updated their comps. And then waltz over to that table and they're paying right around going rate. Here you go. You just made 30, 40% just walking from one end of the room to the other, and that's been a viable strategy historically. I'll be curious to see if that's the case here. That's why it's a shame because see the problem Jay that I have is that I would be a terrible dealer because the problem is I'm a collector. So when I'm doing my stuff, yes you can deal to try to fund your collection, and that's admirable. The problem is that I just like stuff and I'll buy it, and then the problem is for me. So the ROI on that's garbage. So it doesn't matter how much it appreciates. Like if I don't sell it, then I'm not making the money. Other stuff I will buy because I know, and then I'll do well on it, and hopefully over time that offsets. But I'm well in the red over the years on spent versus sold.
Yeah. No. And I Part of the reason why I do the show is I'm still hoping to get an acquisition on something that I've been looking for that comes up to the table and I get it at a good price. Hasn't really happened yet, but I also go to the show because a lot of the way I purchase is I will buy collections out, and by collections I mean not everything the person has, but collection in something. Maybe it's Superman, maybe it's Disney stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then I upgrade my sets, and then I have a lot of doubles. Like I always joke, I probably have the largest Jimmy Olsen collection. Right, he's a Superman series person. I probably have 15 of his graded cards from the 1978 set.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that many Jimmy Olsens, but I get them because they seem to be in everyone's collection of that
Yep.
set that I buy. And so it gives me an opportunity to sell them. And that's why I like to do shows. And that's at this show, I put out my doubles of my 1940 Superman, and I sold some of them. So I find that's good. I started dealing in more pre 1900 president cards,
Okay.
and I don't know much about presidents, but people are really interested in collecting president cards. So, who knew that would be a thing? I had two lighthouse cards. I didn't know there was cards of lighthouses that I stumbled into. Someone bought a lighthouse card, and I felt embarrassed to ask the question. I go, "Why are you buying this?" Because it was a curiosity, and they're like, "I've never seen the card before." They said, "Why are you selling it?" I go, "Well, I'd never seen the card before, so I bought it because I thought it'd be interesting." So I think where the hobby is moving, and I'd be interested in your comments after the expo,
Mm-hmm.
people are more curious about things than they were before. If they see something, and it's not focused on the value of it, it's focused on, gee, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And people would buy that. Like I had 3 fire truck cards. I sold one of them, super cheap, from the 20s. And people said, "I didn't know there were fire truck cards." And they said, "I can't wait to show this to my son. He likes fire trucks." I'm like, yeah, that's kind of why I bought it. It's really bright color thing. It's in a holder, so the kid's not going to, damage the thing. And it's inexpensive, and it's old. But so I found more curiosity from people stopping by than before, because sports is easy to talk about, right? You look at stats. But cards are more interesting and that's why I think people collect other sports cards, like inserts, right? Inserts people talk about. You collect a lot of inserts, right? That's majority of your Madonna collection is, because it's different than the normal Madonna card. And I think that's where people are going with sports and other cards.
Well, the great irony, so just real quick, just to interject, part of the funny part about it is that given the state of the modern sports card collecting hobby, the inserts are the majority. Because if you
Yeah,
really
that's
think
true.
about it, it's one base card. If you take parallels and inserts, like, okay, so the set has 10 cards of Medano, one base card, and 9 everything else. So technically speaking, they're all inserts. It's like
Right. The exception
90%.
swallowed the rule. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the base card is the one. It's like it's the most common. It's the easily available, whatever. But it's like, no, actually, the base cards are the minority, easily.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird the way that's worked out. It's just kind of interesting. But no, I agree with you 100%. I do think the curiosity level's gone up, and I'll talk to you about the pricing thing in a second because that's kind of an interesting thing. But let's talk about one thing. As you were saying, the thing about the presidents just made me chuckle because studied a lot of American history. I'm a little rusty. It's been a little while, but I would laugh. It would be very funny to me. I would love to see an exchange where somebody comes by and sees your president card and he goes, "John Adams or John Quincy Adams?" And it's like, oh no.
I actually have a John Quincy Adams card.
Yeah.
And it's from 1885.
Yeah, that's right.
That I did not actually I sold the James Monroe. I didn't sell the John Quincy Adams. And I even talked to the person. I said, "I only have 2 of these. They're from the same set. Why don't you buy it?" And I don't, I am terrible with 2 things. History that I haven't studied, which I never really studied the presidents.
Yep.
I'm terrible with geography. Like my wife used to do stuff for passport agencies, so people were trying to find different countries and have to do visas and passport renewals, but then
Mhm.
visas to get into the country. And she would say, "Oh, we're this person's going to Guam." I'm like, I don't know. Is that cold or warm? Like that's
Mhm.
that's how bad I am at geography, just because I don't study it. But yeah. So what's the significance of John Adams versus John Quincy Adams?
Father and son. It's just kind of an
Okay,
interesting trivia
that's it.
thing.
Okay,
It's an interesting
okay.
trivia thing. They were both one-term presidents. John Adams was the second president, and John Quincy, I think, was the sixth.
So then John Adams was the John Adams in the HBO series that I really liked.
I believe so.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Depend.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I like that story.
yeah. So it's just it's an interesting little historical quirk. It's not a regular thing. It was like it was different, obviously, but then the Roosevelts obviously were family members who were able to become president as well. So it's just kind of an interesting little. It's a historical footnote, especially in
Okay.
the early days of the Republic. So it's kind of an interesting
Yes.
little. It's kind of an interesting little quirk. But it was just funny to me because I didn't do too much studying on the early American history with the early thing, but there was a lot of weirdness in there with a lot of the early stuff. That's what makes me laugh about how seriously people take it. It's like, if you guys realize how ridiculous the whole thing was, like, it's fundamentally ridiculous. I think if people did a better job studying their own nation's history properly, they would realize the absurdity of it. That's why I get a kick out of when some folks here are very proud of the Canadian history. You do realize that almost all our provinces, and this is true, almost all our provinces joined Confederation because of money. It wasn't because they're, oh, yes, we'd like to join this Canada. Canada started as Upper and Lower Canada, Ontario and Quebec. They didn't really like each other, but they're like, so we got to do this. Do we have to? Yes. Okay, fine. And then the other ones eventually join in. It's like, we'll pay out your debt. Fine. And that carries over to this day where it's like, it's a reluctance. We will accept it. But if you knock Canada, they will get very upset at you, all in a group. It's like,
Yes.
we can make fun of each other. You can't do it.
Can't. You're an
Yeah,
outsider.
yeah,
Yes.
you're an outsider. You're not allowed. But in our own time, God, those Westerners, and
Yeah.
that's how it is. It's like Ontario, exactly, and everybody Quebec. Yep, that's how it is. That's just how it is.
Yep.
But like I said, history is fun, but it's also weird. But yes, now the what I wanted to ask you about in relation to it, just a little sidetrack there. Had to get a little history conversation in there. You never know what you're going to get when these conversations happen. You
No.
never know.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you was one of the things that we had a little pre-discussion, but one of the things was you obviously saw a lot of trading. There was a lot of it, and that's one of the configuration things that I was looking into, kind of seeing. How did you find there were different categories? Obviously, you kind of pointed out to me that there are obviously tire kickers. There are people that are asking a lot of your time. There's a lot of variety of different types of folks that come in. Talking about the folks that were trying to set up trades, how did you find they were approaching that? Was it kind of a, well, we're trying to get trade because I really don't want to spend cash, or is it they're trying to get value out of the stuff they have? What was the impression that you got on how people were trying to construct that?
Most of the people that came up with trade, um, I think they were actually trying to rotate out of things.
Okay.
There were a couple trades that I did
Mm-hmm.
that people said, I have this card of value that you might find interesting. And it was an interesting card. And
Mm-hmm.
I did a couple trades in that way. But a lot of times people were saying, I have this that I don't want, and I want something for it.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not going to buy it. Would you give me some of your cards? Because I think I might have a better chance of moving your cards. I think it's cash conversion thing. So if I can trade you my X for your Y, then I might be able to sell, your Y down the line, right? I'll go sell that. That's what seemed to be the predominant trade angle. But then there were probably a handful of people, 5 or 6 people that I dealt with that had things, and it was really it was trade and cash. Like, this will offset. You have a good price on this. I'm interested in it. That's the card I really want. I don't want to pay all cash for it. Can I give you this? And the hardest thing was coming up with, how do I value what you have, particularly when it's not something that I typically deal with. And so I said, don't make your problem my problem, right? I know if you think it's worth that, or 3/4 of that, right? 70, 75%, go sell it, come back and get the cash. Well, we know that may not be the case. You can't convert it to cash. And we're talking like $300 or $400 cards, right? Not,
Mm-hmm.
not, we're not talking Justin Herbert $7,000 cards.
Yep.
So, but I think that's where people are stuck because they have an inventory in cards that they don't necessarily like anymore, or they've moved on from them. Like, because I have cards like that too. I'm like, I really liked that card when I had it. Now I enjoyed it, but I'm like, there are other things that I want more that I discovered.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can move from this to that, I'd rather have that. And I would probably the best example that I can give is that most people were willing to give up on some of the cards. They just didn't know how. And they're like, well, would you take it at 50% of comps? And I'm like, no. And I said, it's not because it's a bad card. I mean, these were modern, we're talking like a Durant rookie. Mm-hmm. And it's not a high profile Durant rookie. And I'm like, I just really don't want it. And they go, well, which ones do you want? I go, I like Larry Bird. You got any Larry Birds? And they're like, no. I said, and they're like, well, I can get a Steph Curry, right? Just keep the basketball analogy going. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I like Steph Curry, but the guy's so expensive. I already missed the boat on that. Like, mm-hmm. I don't need to have that. So I would say you're probably going to have the same thing. There's probably a lot of people that might want to move out of, Gretzky. Like I looked I couldn't find a really nice one. I still want a nice Yzerman rookie, right? The age 45 OPG. That's what I want. I couldn't find a nice one for a price that I was willing to pay because we all remember how much they were, but they're tough to find in top notch condition. Mm-hmm. No one walked up to the table with an Yzerman rookie, or I would have either bought it or traded anything for it.
Sure. So kind of in that vein, not necessarily your table, but did you at any point have a chance to kind of walk around the floor a little bit yourself?
I did, but I'm guilty as the patrons. Mm-hmm. There's 700 tables.
Yeah,
it's really hard to see everything, and I wonder if it's better to have 150 table show or 700 table show, or how big's the expo? How many tables is that?
I think this one here, I think they said they've got it at about 500 tables, give or take.
That's a lot of tables.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to see everything. So I did look around, but you only can glance. Like, you go walk down the aisle, and then you might miss something because if there's people in front of a table, you don't move on. You do two things. You either stare at the table because mm-hmm. there's action there, so there must be something good, right? The FOMO, mm-hmm. or you skip it because you're like, I'm not going to wait in line, in a sense, to look at that table. And so you do one of two things. So that might be the table where it's got the card you want. Like, one of the things, I couldn't leave my table at the time. I picked up, it was like 4 tables over. It was a Bob Cousy rookie card. Now, I missed the boat on him way back in the day to buy it at a good price. I got a Bob Cousy too, but this guy was talking with me. He had bought some stuff the last show, and he came back this time, bought some stuff. And he goes, what other cards are you looking for? I'm like, I always wanted a Bob Cousy rookie. That's just, I like the Celtics. And he goes, but my friend over there, he's got the table. He's got one. This is the price. Maybe I could make a deal for you. I'm like, well, that'd be great. He goes, you didn't see that card? I'm like, no, I walked around the room. I didn't see it. Mm-hmm. And so he ended up, we negotiated a deal. He goes, okay, here's the price. Here's the card. Look at it. I'm like, great. So I literally bought a card from someone else's table without going there. But I missed that card, and I was looking for it. There were higher value koozies there.
Yeah.
But it is overwhelming at the larger shows.
What you're saying, though, Jay, what I'm hearing from you is that for a brief shining moment in time, you had people.
Yes.
Isn't it wonderful? Isn't having people great?
No. And this person, I mean, I educated on different things,
yep.
and he was like, thankful for that. And we did probably 2 deals, I think, at the show. Last show, he mm-hmm. came back 3 or 4 times when we bought and sold things, and we exchanged information. I said, you are a better sports vintage person than I am. Like, you know the ins and outs of these different things. And I said, so what would you say about X? And he goes, well, this is a really nice koozie. I'm like, can you get it for me? And he goes, I'd be happy to do it. And he did. And it was, which is weird because we really don't know each other, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we know each other in the card context, so I wouldn't call him my guy, but it's a person I trust.
Sure. Yeah.
At least for that type of transaction, because we've always been straight up with each other. Just And I educated him on non-sports. He's like, I really don't know much about this, but
Mhm.
I'm interested. And I said, okay, this is what I would do. This is what I wouldn't do. And so I'm sure I'm going to see him again in July, right? I'm going to go back
Yep.
to the Dallas show.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, historically, that's been the way it is that different people have different specialties. Like nobody knows everything about everything. You can try to have a well-rounded understanding of it, but it's impossible. There's too much stuff. You can't get into any real depth if you're trying to touch on every single category. That's just not possible. But you can have a surface level understanding of a lot of stuff, and that can get you pretty far. But you do want to have a specialty of some kind. So it's not, but it's also nice to know some people who do have specialties in other areas because then indirectly it expands your knowledge base because you can have resources you can get to. But that's I always make the joke about having people. It's like, but no, having people is useful. You get more sets of eyes.
Hmm.
One of my more recent Medano cards, it was a very nice one, was picked up by Paul, who we met in the chat of my live stream. He's a consistent figure. He's a consistent figure. Now we have two Pauls. We have a Wisconsin Paul and we have traditional Alberta Paul. But Alberta Paul was at the Edmonton show. And he sends me a message. He goes, "Hey, do you have this one?" Oh, I'm not in Edmonton. Physically, there is no way I could have seen this card. And we were able to come through a deal. I called him on the phone. We were able to come to a deal with the dealer, and he sent it over.
Yep.
Sometimes it's nice to have other sets of eyes that can look out there, and they know that I collect Medano, but like I don't have a checklist out there. But if it's rare enough, well, take a shot at it. I may need it. I may have it, but I may need it. It just depends. But it's always good. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about, so when you did get a chance to walk around a little bit in the vein of what you were talking about, did you find this is something that I'm going to be observing at the expo for sure? Did you find that the prices on the stickers, at least, not even talking about negotiating, but just initially, do you find that people are adjusting to moving prices, or do you feel like some people are trying to hang on to maybe previous pricing structures?
For the things that I'm familiar with,
Sure,
pricing wise,
sure.
I would say that they're at comps or above,
Hmm.
and everyone when they dealt with me and when I walked around, it's certainly an offer with the understanding that I know the not me, but the understanding is I know you're gonna try to, if you're interested in the card, try to pay less.
Hmm.
So it was really more of an invitation. No one was hard and fast with their numbers. The people I was around, from what I observed and the deals that I saw going down, no one was hard and fast with their stated price
Hmm.
that if it was placed on a sticker. I mean, I even observed. I saw a deal not take place, which I thought was kind of crazy. It was a Josh Allen for a Herbert, both
Hmm.
rookies. Um, the Herbert card was coming along with cash, a sizable amount of cash,
Hmm.
and the Josh Allen person didn't that had the card didn't do it. And I was like, for the amount of cash that's involved in this, do it, because at the end of the day, you have two players that are both could get injured. Well, it doesn't matter what happens. You got the cash, so
Hmm. Right.
take the lesser card. But most of the sticker prices were negotiable, and I saw people openly negotiating. But the weird thing was the problem I have with pricing cards
Hmm.
is I can put fair value on the card, at least what I think is fair value, whether that's at comps, above comps, below comps.
Hmm.
And I know people are always going to negotiate. So it's like, should I just price them above where I think the card should sell, knowing I'm going to have to come down? Because the one thing I did see is it happened to me a bunch of times, and I saw it happen at other tables. People picking out the cards they like,
Hmm.
putting them together, trying to individually negotiate on price. Then when you get the group, let's say I had a bunch of cards for $100. So they're like, would you take 80 for that? Sure. So they get up, for ease of math, they got 10 of those. So it was originally 1,000. They got it down to 800, right?
Hmm.
Individually. They put them in the bulk and they go, would you take $600 for these? Because I'm at 800, right? Well, in their mind, they're like, I'm at 800. I want to get a deal because I'm buying bulk. And I'm like, well, now you're buying at 60%. And
Hmm.
those prices might have been lower before. I saw a lot of that. And the thing that I couldn't tell was whether or not this was a dealer trying to do it, right, for
Hmm.
resale purposes, or if this was a collector.
Yeah.
Because I am more receptive to collectors, because I'm like, yeah, if you want the card, there's one woman. She came up to me. I think so she came up to me and she was looking for a pug card, just a dog card,
Okay.
and I didn't have an old one. I didn't have any from the 1890 collection, but I found one from 1902. So I
Mhm.
ran down a couple of aisles and handed it to her, and she
Mhm.
she bought it from me.
Yep.
And my buddy said, why are you giving her card away? I said, she actually likes Disney. I know she's going to come back because she was also asking if I could find more pug cards. So at the show, I bought a Disney rookie, this 1931 card.
Yes.
I bought it for a good price from a person, and I put it at a high price, basically to hold it for her. She
Mhm.
did come back, and she goes, "Oh, you got one? That's actually seems reasonable in the price." I go, "No, no, I put it at that price. Your price is this. I just bought it at the show. I didn't have it before." And she bought
Mhm.
it from no haggling. She's
Mhm.
like, "Thanks."
Mhm.
And I said, "Yeah," and I made money on it, but it
Sure.
was it was more. I saw a lot more of that internal flipping, trying to buy super low from dealers. The dealers buying super low because they knew that they had an immediate customer. But if there was a card that people didn't think they could sell, the purchase price dropped way down. And a couple of the dealers around me deal in Marvel and then some modern sports. They weren't buying anything. It was
Mhm.
just, I'm buying vintage. I'll trade modern for modern or trade vintage, but I won't cross
Mm.
between them.
Okay. No, that seems fair. It's always been an interesting dynamic, and I understand, and I think it's very good that you were able to do that for that lady, and it is good when that opportunity then allows you to be able to then provide the card that they wanted at a fair price and everything. I've always been the pricing philosophy. I don't set up at tables. I don't set up at shows. Part of it is the cost, the upfront cost. It's
Hmm.
huge. Second is I hate being tethered. It's one of those things. I'm willing to help out a buddy for sure. Come and watch it over the table and stuff. But I hate the idea of being tethered to the table for an extended period of time without being able to rotate around. I like being able to putter about here and there, or hold court in the food court if I feel like it.
I know,
Um,
that's why I wanted to go. I wanted to see what you guys talk about at the food
yeah.
court. But
Oh,
yeah, we'll make
anything and
it.
everything. It's basically the live stream, but live. But the thing is that uh, the other aspect of it is that there is a lot of preparatory work you have to do. There is a lot of you have to even for the small thing. In the off chance that I get a chance to maybe put a couple of cards there on the table. We'll see if that opportunity comes to pass. But I brought some cards anyway just to see if I want to do anything with them. But even with a relatively small amount of cards, I'm bringing maybe about 50 or 60 cards. Relatively small. That's not going to be something you're going to put up at a dealer table. And I don't have an inventory to that degree. But number one, to set up at a show, you'd have to have an inventory, and you'd have to try to figure it out. Like there's a balance between, yeah, I'd love to get bought out, but then okay, we're done, and then you paid for the table. Hopefully that covered the value of the table. You have to have enough stuff. But the other aspect of it is, yes, the pricing, the haggling, all the different aspects of it. People trying to do the arbitrage thing. They're trying to get you down on price because then they're going to run over to the other side of the room and then make a secondary deal where like, no, I'd rather have sold to you then, if there was more money on
Yeah.
the table for me there. But one thing that I always think is a little bit interesting is kind of what you talked about. I feel like I'd be curious if more people are going to try to be exploitative of the whole collector angle. Because it's funny, it's like, yeah, it's in my, because I listen to a lot of folks that talk about a lot of these things. It's like, oh, it's in my PC. And then like a week later, they'll sell it. I sell stuff from my PC, but oftentimes it is with the understanding that I'm trying to do something specific. Or I bought it being it is in my PC for now. I know exactly what it is that I plan on doing. I may eventually consolidate into something very specific. I have a certain vision. I use the Juan Soto kind of sub collection as an example. I have a bunch of different Juan Sotos. I even have duplicates of some nice cards for him. I don't need duplicates, and I don't intend. The Medano collection is expansive. I don't want to do another expansive player collection. I'm interested in more scaled down. Ideally, I'd love to have maybe about 10 to 15 nice Juan Soto cards, and I would consider that a solid collection I'd be happy with. That will require some consolidation because I already have more than that now. So for me, that would be something where, yes, it would be collection, but the possibility is down the road that I would flip something because some of those cards I would definitely consider flipping for the right deal. So it can be true and at the same time change, subject to change.
Yeah, but see the way my definition. This is the funniest part of the conversation because
Sure.
you talk about flipping. Um, you bought it and now you're selling it, is that flipping, right? So I always look at it as, what's the time frame? Like,
Mhm.
what's the definition of flipping? Is it to buy today to sell literally tomorrow,
Mhm.
or is it, if I bought it today and I sell in a year, did I flip it? No, I don't know, but I've seen that, because people came up to the table and they're like, well, I'm getting out of basketball. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Basketball's dead, right? Playoffs are over. I'm like, well, define what you mean by the basketball part of the hobby, right?
Mhm.
There's vintage.
Yeah.
There's, the funny thing came up even on your live stream, which I got through,
Mhm.
last night, was Star Wars. Oh,
Mhm.
Star Wars is being hyped, and I'm like, okay, Star Wars has been a franchise for what?
Mhm.
So 23, so 45 years. Um, so when you say Star Wars and cards, what does that mean? You're talking the modern stuff from like 2020, 2021? Are you talking stuff from the 90s? Talking stuff from the 70s? What is it? I think we've gotten a little, maybe this is hashtag lazy,
Oh
but
yes.
we need to be more specific
Oh
about
dear
what we're
Lord.
talking about. But that it's a frustration of mine, because the person said, he's like, wow, you got a vintage Larry Bird. I'm like, it's Larry Bird from 1981, 82, right?
Sure.
And he has an earlier card, and then he has a sportscaster card, but Larry Bird's not vintage. He's old school. I'm comfortable saying Larry Bird's an old
See
school
that's the
basketball player.
problem though. That I'm not going to delve into that conversation today. But
Yeah.
we ran into that problem where dynamically, for me, I still put vintage cutoff at 79, 79 or
Hmm.
80. That's kind of
Yeah.
like that's been the traditional. The problem is every year that goes by, we keep separating further and further from that, and it becomes like now that's 40 years ago. That's 42 years ago. It's like,
I have a funny definition of vintage that was shared to this guy I talk to regularly about cards. He goes, I don't consider anything vintage that's not older than me. And he goes, as I get older, vintage keeps carrying back. So as long as it's my age or older, then it's vintage, but I don't want to consider myself vintage. I'm like, all right, that makes sense.
mhm.
So depending on your age,
I know a
but
few
no,
people. I know a few people who use that angle. Yes.
but maybe teasing it out a bit, regardless of the definition of vintage and all that, I just think I will say things at times
Mhm.
that's not accurate. It's accurate to me, but it may not be accurate to you, because we haven't agreed upon a definition in advance, right?
Yeah.
What's Star Wars? What's the basketball market? What's the hobby,
Mhm.
right? Does the hobby include NFTs? I don't know. I
Mhm.
mean, not to me, but to someone else,
Mhm.
that it may very well.
Yeah.
So, if we put more context into the discussions, I think people will be helpful. That's why when you asked about, prices or comps and how,
Mhm.
I'm like, well, it does depend,
It does
right?
depend.
Because
Yeah.
wax was selling fairly well
Mhm.
for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know. I mean, people did offer to sell a lot of wax to the
Mhm.
table. Now, I didn't consider that walking up to the table offer, because I wasn't interested in wax. But
Mhm.
it's just it's the hobby is so big that being more specific about things will actually be helpful to people like listening to this, or even us talking while you prepare for the expo.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you in that sense. Well, to be blunt, I agree 100%. One of my things, I don't even consider it a frustration anymore because at this point I'm just used to it. Specificity doesn't exist. I try in videos that I do to try to be clear about parameters. That's the reason why I take. Now, for some people, that's going to work. For other people, they're like, oh, you're taking too long to explain this. It's like, no, I have to set the parameters because you guys are speaking in broad strokes. And that means when we speak in that kind of broad strokes, you're wrong because you're going so broad that you hit on a bunch of, well, you were correct here for this sliver right here, and then for this, and this, wrong, 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 wrong. So, and that's because you went broad stroke. If you had set the parameters and we had been clear what we're talking about, there's a real possibility you were correct. Your thesis makes sense within that narrow band, if we know what you're talking about. If we don't, then we're left open to interpretation. Now, there's a question I have for you that kind of plays into this a little bit as well. But let me quickly side tangent since you brought
Yep.
up the Star Wars thing because I'm kind of curious. I want to get your take on this. So the specific hype thing that was spoken of with the Star Wars was related to a kind of
The
gawa or something.
Kurosawa.
Thank you, thank you.
Kurosawa.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So it was the one of one. It was the one of one that was purchased. by Moral World, sold to Great Curator for a hefty profit, bro price, and
Yeah.
then sold for an even better bro price to Dapsman. And I will only refer to him as Dapsman. That is his name, at least in my realms. But the point is, so there's this. We can see the succession of sales. We can see that it was purchased first, then to Great Curator, Merle World, Great Curator, now Dapsman. So in that time, the price has escalated and gone up in price. And now they've got a podcast where they talk about all things Star Wars. First thing we're going to talk about is the one of one.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. My take on it. I'll quickly recap my take, but then I'm curious about yours. My take on it was like it's so blatant, it's so transparent, it's to the point of an infomercial. The podcast is effectively an infomercial for it. I don't care. It's relatively harmless in the grand scheme of things. Not because it's a good thing they're hyping it up, but I'm also thinking to card shows. What happens when I go to a dealer? They talk up the merchandise. The goal is to try to maximize revenue. But it's happening in real time. I don't think anybody really thinks about it. They don't like have a moral recoil objection to it. It's like you come to expect it, especially if you're a veteran hobbyist. You've seen it so many times. You actually ignore it. You filter it out. It's like commercials on TV. You don't even see them anymore. They're not even there. So it doesn't bother me. But does that strike you as something, is that the type of hype that should be concerning? Does it concern you? Is that pumping and dumping, by that definition? Because the intention is to sell it for a hefty profit. They asked the question, is it a $100,000 card? Even though it was less than a $20,000 card 3 seconds ago, and a couple of minutes ago, it was a $5,000 card.
I'm not, here's why I'm not opposed to it. I don't care, right?
That's kind of my
dressed up
tack,
for the
but I just
card.
wanted to get your opinion.
But B, it's like, look, generally what Merlin bought it for. It was around 1,000.
Yeah.
Maybe it was
Well,
under
and
1,000.
we'll take it at face value. Like I said, we don't
Yeah,
know with 100%
we'll
certainty.
assume,
We'll
right?
take it at face value. Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's been marked up along the line. And I look at it this way: Daps can sell it. Good for him, only because hey, I wouldn't have bought the card with the intention of trying to be able to sell it, because that's not my risk tolerance. But does it have that potential value? Well, it's 101. I know I'm not a big fan of numbered cards, but that's it. But it's not for me. But if he does it, that's fine. It's certainly an interesting storied card. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's about as blatantly transparent as you can get.
That was basically my point. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like it's fine. And you know what? The purchaser, if someone is going to buy it for the price, I don't even know, was it 30,000, 50,000, whatever the price that's being offered at, the person that's buying it at that level probably is not thinking about it from a standpoint of what's the true value of it. He's like, no, I just want it. Like there are cards that I buy. People are like, why are you buying that? I'm like, I just want it. Like you probably bought some Modano things that you're like, what's the true value? You're like, well, this I won't see again, so I have to buy it, and I know I'm paying up for it. Or other things you're like, I think I'll see it again. This is one of those things you won't see again, and if you want it, you buy it.
Yeah.
And if you have numbers available to you at that level, then you bought it because you want it. I mean, I joke about dog cards. I'm like, someone should buy all the dog cards that I have and go to Westminster and just sell them there, because those people have crazy money and they like dogs. Like why am I in Dallas? I should just go to the Westminster Dog Show every summer or whatever.
You could be the only dealer table at that booth. The only one. It's like, guys, I got you.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that'd be fun. I'm in agreement with you. I was just kind of curious on your take, and that's the thing. And I always preamble it with this. Maybe the problem is I've been in the hobby too long. Maybe the problem is I'm too jaded in a certain way, because none of this stuff bothers me. It's just another wave that rolls in and then rolls right out. It's the tide. So it'll come and it'll go, just like anything
I'll
else.
tell you a really quick short story for this purpose. So I when I bought and sold cards in the 90s, I did card shows at malls and stuff. So, and this is where you basically say you've seen it, not seen it all, but a guy had me go out and buy his 1982 Topps Traded. It's when Ripken got really popular because of his streak. He was breaking the streak. And so
right around mid-90s. He was on my Beckett hot list constantly.
Yeah, but before that, people knew he was eventually going to do it. So I went out and bought those cards. I think it was probably '92
Mhm.
when I bought them, but they just spiked in the Beckett guide real a lot. And he said, "I will buy the I got to change my headset. I will buy for $200. I'll buy the Topps traded set. Go buy them for me." So I did, and I purchased them. And he goes, you know, I went to his table, gave it to him. He literally turned to the dealer next to him and sold them for $300.
Mhm.
Now, and he gave me the money, and that was the agreed upon deal. I think I bought him for 180. So I did more work, he did less work. He made the profit, but I'm like, he's like, we're good. I'm like, yep. And then I went to my table, but that's the nature of it.
Mhm.
Like, it's not bad.
Mhm.
It's he knew the buyer,
Yeah.
just like Daps will find the buyer won't,
Yeah.
and he'll have the card.
Yeah. Do you need a minute to switch out the headset?
I just did.
Okay, perfect. So all I was going to say about that. So one more thing here. We'll and then we'll move on to a different thing. By the way, how are you for time?
I'm pretty good. My wife's going to come home, so the dogs are going to get antsy when she comes home in probably like 10 minutes.
Okay,
So,
just want to make sure. Just want to make sure.
yeah.
My thought on this, and this would be this would be for me. This is my trolley heart now at work. My dream. I want the next buyer to be Logan Paul. I think that would be fantastic. I want Dapsman to sell this to Logan Paul for $250,000 for no reason. And I actually have a follow up question. By the way, I have a follow up question that's more
Okay.
serious. But just humor me for a moment for my entertainment value. Do you not think it would be glorious if Logan Paul of all people bought the damn thing for $250,000? That'd just be
Um,
funny.
I was actually thinking about that in a different way.
Hmm.
I want to know if Logan Paul has gone out because I think there were a couple up for sale in private channels of graded GI Joe cards, and I don't know why he doesn't buy the GI Joe set graded
He should.
just to have it. Because put it this way, he could have a show about it and go through each of the cards.
Why not both, Jay? Why, for our collective enjoyment, why not both? I want like a 10-part series. Logan Paul props up dumb market. He
Yes,
just picks something. I want him to buy GI Joe cards. I want him to buy this Star Wars
I
card.
know what he should buy because we actually researched this at the table. I thought that it was being offered, but apparently it was a failed Kickstarter.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know about it in Canada. It's Sharknado. Do you know
Well,
what
I know
Sharknado
of
is?
Sharknado. Yes, the
Okay,
ridiculousness. Yes, I do know
apparently
that one.
there are cards of Sharknado,
That is
which
sensational and terrible.
it's terrible. But we were joking, and I go, I think I have the best idea of something that could become big, that has a cult following,
Mm.
that I actually would like to purchase, not for a lot of money, but just to have at my table to have a Sharknado card. And then we looked it up, and we're like, this actually exists. I can't believe it. Like, have we literally jumped a shark? Like, it's the weirdest thing in the world. But and I just offer that because I just find it amusing.
Jay,
And
I
I
appreciate
own
you,
no Sharknado cards, but I actually
but we
researched it.
should but we
Now,
should now.
yes,
I'm
before you
convinced.
release this, Carlos.
I was like, listen, I'm pumping the damn Sharknado. If nothing else, here's a quick secret for those of you who hung around this conversation this long. My entire channel is basically an absurdist parody of sports card content most of the time. If you watch the live stream, look, I'm on the goddamn logo.
Yes.
The channel's named because I'm Carlos. If you think this crap is to be taken seriously, what's wrong with you? I can't help you at that point. You don't understand what parody is. Otherwise, to be clear, Mike Trout sucks. And so does Tom Brady.
Yes.
I'm completely serious on all these counts. Anyway,
Sure.
moving on.
A
Moving
better
on.
fish.
Yeah,
A
moving on.
shark.
Oh, listen. He's not even the best fish guy on that team. Tim Salmon for the win, my friend. Tim Salmon
Yes.
for the win. But anyway, but no, I now I kind of wanted this Logan Paul, 10-part series. I want these damn Sharknado cards in episode 3, just so we got it just in time. Who makes them? Now I'm curious. Who makes these cards?
You just do a quick search, Kickstarter, Sharknado.
It was a Kickstarter. Okay.
Yes.
Good Lord. Kickstarter Sharknado. Okay, I'm going to ask my question while I'm Googling this. So
Isn't
when I
it
was,
fascinating though?
it's 100% fascinating. Now I'm like, I'm going to be thinking about this now. What the heck? Oh my God. Glorious. Official collectible trading card. Yes, official. That's what makes it. Oh God. Oh good Lord, the art. Oh my goodness.
Wouldn't
Okay.
that be great on the table in
I'm,
Canada?
oh, it'd be great on the table anywhere.
Yes.
Okay, so just I'll put it on the screen for a second. Y'all know now. This is the next thing. We're gonna have to pump the hell out of this thing now. I don't have any, but I should. Okay, so moving on for a moment.
Yeah.
More serious question. More serious question. What I was thinking about, and this is more of a kind of an opinion piece with a lot of these non-sport things. So let's say my dream comes true, my trolley dream comes true, and Logan Paul did buy the damn Star Wars card. Okay, it gets all this publicity because Logan Paul would prance around with it. That's kind of his deal. He does stuff like that. The prevailing question is, okay, so would that actually push that market up? Because there have been people who've been collecting those Star Wars Galaxy cards for years, and they're nice cards. Like, to be blunt, if you like the art and stuff like that, they're nice cards. But they weren't going for crazy prices. That was the whole point of this endeavor, the whole point of this exercise. As nice as that card is, it was available in somebody's shoebox sitting at a show, just randomly, until Merle bought it, and then Great Curator bought it. He started promoting the hell out of it. But here's the thing. The reason why I say it, I didn't care about them doing this, is that literally you're just buying it from each other. Merle bought it, sold it to Great Curator. Merle got money from Great Curator. Great Curator got money from Daps. Until the next person buys it that is outside of this trio, I'm like, okay, trade money amongst yourselves. I don't care. It's your own business. But if I introduce the celebrity element, again, hypothetically, if I introduce it, well, that would raise the profile substantially. Would that then raise the profile of the set, in turn, maybe push up the price of even stuff like the vintage? Because again, to your point, Star Wars has been a popular property for a long time. But maybe a lot of folks didn't know they had cards of it. Or maybe didn't really pay attention to it. They're like, oh my God, the Star Wars cards are going for that much? I wonder what else is out there. Oh, there's the 77 Star Wars. There's this, that, and the other thing. There was even a Star Wars collectible card game, which I knew about years and years ago. I thought it was interesting, but I'm not a Star Wars guy. But it was interesting, and it was out there. What do you think about that? Would something like that actually, in a market like that, which doesn't have tons and tons and tons of sets, but's got some, would that be enough to actually push it, even in the short term?
So we'll call it, I think it's from Galaxy. I think
Yeah.
it pulls up the value a little bit because
Yeah.
probably the wax goes up and people like the base card of that.
Yeah.
I don't think Star Wars appreciates in value just because that card sells. Frankly, Star Wars moved up in value because Luke Skywalker went for $55,000, the number one card from the blue set. That Star Wars has so much notoriety; it doesn't need the help of that. I think, like, I would say I would juxtapose Marvel
Mm-hmm.
and PMGs
Mm-hmm.
from the Star Wars franchise and cards. I think Marvel needed a PMG set to get hot,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, to move the value of all Marvel cards up. But remember, Marvel started with people getting interested in the 1990s Marvel, and then people look backwards and forwards. That's what you always see happen in at least in non-sports, right? So again, anecdotally, I'm talking about non-sports, not sports, but people look backwards and forwards. I've seen it with superheroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people are still starting. The big collectors have always been collecting 1940 Superman cards, but people are gradually moving back. Marvel did the same thing. People went back. People aren't for Marvel. They're looking at the stickers, and then they moved ahead and they said, "What is as good? What's a correlation with sports? Oh, PMGs look interesting, tough to get, numbered card, blah blah blah."
Okay.
So I think people always want a narrative around something.
Now,
So I would
here's
say,
a question. Quick question. I just want to
Yep.
kind of counter one of the points you made because I don't fundamentally disagree,
Yep.
but I'm just kind of curious about this. There is something to be said, and this happens in a lot of these little side markets. There is something to be said for a market trading for years at a certain price level, and people are just comfortable with it. And that's the price level. The collectors have been collecting it for forever. They're used to the card being $100. It's been $100 for the last 5 years. Maybe it was 105, 95, right around that hovering range. And then somebody goes in there and just breaks the paradigm. They push it to the point that it's like, oh, so someone would actually spend six figures. Because as soon as you break, it's like a psychological barrier. And we have this in sports cards too. During that big run up, when sports cards went crazy and went way up, the Jordan 86 Fleer has been an iconic card forever. But it was at a certain price point for a very long time. Jordan won his championships. It settled in at a certain price point for years. And then we had a gigantic run up, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, a Jordan PSA 10 sold for 35,000, 50,000, and 65,000. It kind of settled there for a little bit, even as things were going up, but it settled, and then it slowly crept up, and then one day it crossed $100,000, and then it's like, oh, and then it came back down a little bit, and then it came back up a little bit, and then eventually blew past 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. It apexed at that 700, whatever, that one specific sale. But you don't get there until someone breaks. It's like what they use in those stock market charts. Someone has to break the resistance
Break
and
the
go
trend
past
line.
that. You have to break it. And if it's broken substantially enough, that doesn't, it can still come back down. But if someone goes and actually breaks that trend line, it recalibrates the rest of the market. All of a sudden, people are like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess I can spend $500 on this. It's way cheaper than that other one, but you never spent more than 100. How did you get to 500? Oh, well, this other one's gone for 20, 30, 50 grand now. So it's like now suddenly it's viable. People are suddenly willing to go that extra step where before it was like, no, it's $100. That's it.
I can give you a good example of that,
Sure.
and it's what I'm actually curious about. I'm just trying to
Sure.
check the
Yeah, but
exact
but
price.
you see, kind of what that's the curiosity I have. I'm just wondering if because again, I'm assuming if he did it, he could buy that card. Again, I'm using that hypothetical with Logan
Yeah,
Paul. I'm using like an extreme example for
any
this.
any
This
any celebrity, but
yeah,
we're talking record price of a card that you didn't
yeah,
expect that price of.
yeah. So if you get him to buy a couple of cards for eye popping numbers
Hmm.
comparatively to where the historical trend has been, and then you get Steve Aoki to do the same thing. He buys a couple of cards for a lot of money. So now you got a couple of these guys prancing around with these cards that they've paid six figures for. That wasn't a thing before. Would that be enough to make like, oh well, maybe this stuff should be worth a little bit more?
Yes, and here's a good example, and this is the one I'm actually going to be watching. It's a non-sports example, so it's good.
Sure.
There were two auctions. It was the Dallas weekend, so not this weekend, last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Two the number one sets, sticker set, and the regular trading card set
Mm-hmm.
of uh, Charlie's Angels.
Okay.
Okay, so very the number one sets of the stickers and regular cards went for, in my mind, historic prices. The sticker set is 40. I'm trying to remember. I think it was on memory lane, and the sticker set went. It's like a 38 card, 44 card set, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Small number. Went for $3,000 for Charlie's Angels stickers, which those stickers. I mean, I sold a nine. There were basically nines and tens in that set.
Mm-hmm.
I think I sold a nine for like $20, right? Not much. I like the stickers because it's Charlie's Angels, and everyone knows who they are. And then the trading card set went for a lot of money, and I think that I don't know if it's going to be Charlie's Angels that takes off, but I still think that that's going to bring interest to it. So I think uh, what it does is not legitimize. That's a terrible word. It validates that there can be value in something other than sports cards.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Kurosawa the thing to do it? I think Luke Skywalker already did it. I was looking at auctions. It was fall of last year. A Jawa Topps, the Wonder Bread card from '77. It was a 10. There was pop 9 or 10 of them. It went for $9,000. I mean, I got blown away in bidding. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's already happened in Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think, yes, a Logan Paul coming in um, type of thing also helps validate it. But I would say this: if Aoki bought it, then I think people would say, okay, we're at the top now, right? Like this, they keep saying with the PMGs, which I look at it this way: the guy can afford it. He likes his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let him buy what he wants. Like who cares? I
Yeah.
mean, it's fine.
Yeah,
So
the amount of people that are going to spend that much money on a card, regardless, is very limited. It's
yes.
it's a very small subset of folks. But again, like I said, for me, the only angle I'm taking on it is that psychological barrier thing, because
Hmm.
historically that has proven to be a real thing. Like I said, that Jordan card's been around a long time. It's been an iconic card for him a long time. It had settled into a certain price point until someone broke the paradigm. Like they're like, well, we could spend more on that. Why? There's 316 of them.
Well, you could look at Gretzky. Gretzky was the same way. Gretzky finally seemed to, and I'm not sure exactly when it was. You probably have a better idea, but there was a time where that was trading in a range. Like
Hmm.
that was just the range.
For
So some of
years.
the better
For
ones
years.
you get to the top, and then once it broke out of there, Lemieux is probably the best example of
Hmm.
that. Like
Yeah.
that went because that card's, I don't know if it's more prevalent, but I've had probably 20 Lemieux rookie cards when I was dealing cards because it was people love that card, right? I
Hmm.
was close to Pittsburgh. It was a great card,
Yeah.
but that was trading in a range, and then it just went shoosh, right up.
Yeah, there's a fair number of the Lemieux. Here's what I'll say: I would love to do like a real survey, like a legitimate survey on it. I don't know which one is available in greater abundance because my buddy Brad literally is going to fill up a display with 26 of them. He's got well over 50,
Wow.
and like I said, I had two, and I actively avoided it. It's like the doorstop joke is a joke, but it's like it's not really a joke. They were. You could go to the show, and there were years where you'd see 500 or 1,000 of them in the building at all grades, all price points, whatever, and they were available forever. And you could get them for a song. And then obviously the price went up, and suddenly they dried up. And I was like, there were still lots of them out there. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know some of you are like, yeah, just store that in the back. They're selling for more individually. Don't put them all out at the same time.
Hmm.
You're gonna have somebody's like, oh, I only have one at the table. As soon as they buy it, I only have
Yep.
one at the table. It wouldn't shock me if that's the what happened with the population. It's like the population didn't go away; it just got reallocated or shoved in the closet until such time that we're ready to pull it back out. But it's interesting. It's kind of a fun thing as far as I'm concerned. So let me kind of and this has been a very fun conversation, Jay. So thank you for joining me on this one. I want to get a couple of fun stories from Dallas here. Tell me your favorite lowballing stories. You got some fun
Oh,
lowballers?
yeah, I do. The one is it's a Disney card. I won't reveal the card, but
Sure.
basically, and I researched it after the fact just to
Hmm.
figure it out. But so I had the card out there. Let's call it $300, right?
Okay.
So that wasn't the price. It's card pre 1950s. So the person came up. He's like, I really like the card. Your price is high. I'm like, tell me why. I'll listen to you.
Hmm.
And he goes, the last sale was 3 months ago, and it went for $125. I'm like, yeah, I bought it.
Hmm.
And he goes, well, it's. He looks it up on alt. He's like, well, it's got a downtrend line, and I'm like, well, alt does that for everything, and their software is like not perfect at it. I don't see many uptrend lines. They put the overall market impact to it. I go, what is it that you want to pay for this card? You know what I'm offering it for? Let's call it the $300 price. He goes, I'll give you in comparison. He goes, I'll give you $60 for it. I go, wait, I told you I bought it for 120.
Hmm.
I said, you want to pay me half of what I bought it for? I said, let's do this. Why don't you go look and see which ones are available on eBay? Same card, go find it in that grade.
Hmm.
He goes, well, they're $600 on eBay. Remember, we're doing hypothetical
Hmm.
prices.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, so I wouldn't buy it on eBay. I want to buy it from you. And I'm like, no, that's the point. The price has gone up. And that was his main point on price. He goes, yeah, I don't want to pay above comps. I'm like, well, comps are comps. You keep saying that, but I said
Hmm.
I look at replacement value. Um, I'll give you one other example. This is the funniest one, and this
Sure.
is about
Go for it.
dog cards.
Okay.
So I was selling the 1890 dog cards, my favorite card. Person spends time at the table, picks out 4 cards. He goes, how much are they? I'm like, they're $25 each. We'll look at the condition. Maybe I'll adjust it a little lower if the condition's not there. Picks them out, and he goes, well, let me go find these on eBay. And, okay. He goes, I don't want to buy them. I'm like, okay, then don't buy them. He goes, this card is only a $5 card. I'm like, who's selling them for $5? I said, I'll buy them right now. He goes, in 2017,
Hmm.
this particular dog, same card sold for $5. I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure, I could have bought Jordan rookies for $1,000 at some point in
Hmm.
time, but this is today at the show. And that has become the mentality that I see for certain collectors. And
Hmm.
and I applaud them. And I don't think the person was trying to, you know, do something nefarious. I think the person legitimately believed it was only a $5 card.
Hmm.
So um, my wife just walked in, so you're gonna hear the dogs
No worries. No
go
worries.
nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is funny though because it also works the other way. When something hasn't sold in a long time, some people just assume it's gone up like 50x, 100x, whatever. It's like, well, it hasn't sold
Yep.
in 5, 6 years. It's like, well, you're just making up a number now. You just
Yes.
yeah, like it's not anchored in any reality. The thing with comps, just briefly, kind of end the thought on this, is that the comps thing has to be anchored in something.
Mhm.
We can disagree on what it's anchored on, and then have a debate and discussion on that, but we have to anchor it based on anything, something that seems relevant at least at the bare minimum, and that can help you then establish where the price is going to go.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I would say is that maybe comps were better, maybe over the last 2 years, because of more things were done electronically. Whereas today, there's more available sales with respect to at shows.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I don't think the comps reflect maybe what the activity is, high or low, right? Because it works both ways.
Well, that's
They,
exactly right. Yeah. Because the show
yeah,
kind of throws a monkey wrench in this. Because
hmm,
it's like the old Beckett price guide days. The card is
exactly.
$100 in the Beckett price guide. Here's the thing: when I go to a card show, I'm not paying $100. My intention is to talk down from this number. We can use it as an anchor point, but I'm not. I'm not. I don't intend to pay $100. I don't care what it says.
Well, you might have to pay more because it's got a black arrow going up.
Yeah,
Remember those
in
days?
some instances,
Yeah.
yes, but that's the thing. It's like it's the starting anchor point, and then we
Mhm.
go. So even the comps, to me, I treat them like the old price guide. It's like, okay, that's cool. That's what it's sold for. But the dealer can say, oh well, then there's the fees and this, that, and the other thing, and the buyer can argue that it's like, well, actually, it's 13% less of that because of fees and whatever from eBay. So in reality, if I offer you 10% less, you're actually coming out ahead in terms of dollars in your pocket. The dealer can be like, yeah, but you got to ship it out and this, that, and the other thing. So you both have a point. You both have an argument that you can make for that. But it's never taken into account. But those sales at the card show, they don't count.
No.
They're not absorbed in these data analytics tools. So that's why I say, like, it's a very weird thing, because at a card show, what if somebody just didn't know what they had and they just underpriced it? They sold $1,000 card for $200, but they legitimately thought it was $200. But a person walked by, saw it, and goes, "Nope, yeah, 200, yeah, okay, see you later."
Yep. That's exactly what happens.
So it's like, is that a comp? Did that bring the price down? Should we be knocking the should we hitting the down arrow on this one?
No, there was one like that. It was one of the superhero cards, and the person said, "Well, the comp on that is, it's like let's call it
Mm-hmm.
$100 card," and the comp was $15, right? And I had actually bought the card. He goes, "That's $15." I'm like, "No, that's my sale." He goes, "Well, that's what it's worth because no one else bought it." I'm like, "Yeah, but no, I bought it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's normally $100 card." He goes, "Well, why did you buy it?" I said, "I bought it because I thought it was a fantastic deal.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I got a deal doesn't." And the person actually wanted to pay $10 for the card. He wanted 70% of it, so it was just hilarious.
Yep.
But
No, I agree
but
with that.
I got to run. If that's okay. I
Yeah,
know
no,
it's probably
absolutely. Well, I'm going to wind it up
yes.
right now. So, Jay,
Okay.
thank you again for joining me. It's been a pleasure. We'll have you back on the channel at some point to talk about a couple other things, and then and we'll bring you back on, and then you can bring some good material, and make fun of Eric. We bring it full circle,
I will.
and now
Well,
we
he's
know
getting better. That's good.
now we got to pump Sharknado. Now
Yes,
that's
that's
the
right.
next thing. Now that we know it's a thing, it's like, well, maybe it's time to pump some Sharknado.
Well, enjoy the expo and have a lot of fun. And my number one recommendation would be just I find it fascinating to watch what's going on, and I try to track people's eyes when they look at cases
Mm-hmm.
of cards. I'd be interested to see. Well, you're not going to see. Was it Dan, right? That has all the Gretzky's going on. I'd be interested to see, do people flock to it because there's so many, or
Mm-hmm.
do they look at the different conditions of them? But that will be enjoy the expo. I mean, you're going to have a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I will. Well, you I don't know if you know this. The great curator is coming to Canada.
Maybe you can get your eyes on some good
I was gonna say,
PMTs.
it's like, so what's the next thing we got to pump up over here? It's like, what do we got to do? You got any Sharknado? Ah, you're stuck. Moving on.
No, I had breakfast, and I went to breakfast with back in March with him and Merlin. I mean,
Ah, so you're part of the conspiracy.
well, I'm a little pushy. No, I was sitting there eating breakfast by myself,
Yeah, yeah,
so I saw them, and I go like, I just sat down. I go, "Can I have breakfast with you guys? I want to ask you some questions, right?" Because they know the Dallas show,
yeah,
and they're actually really nice in person. I mean, they're fun,
yeah.
um, but they were both grumpy because apparently they stayed out too late at trade night, so they
Mm,
basically didn't say anything, and they were just drinking coffee. But it was
yep.
funny. I'm like, "How do you guys decide, what you're going to sell and what day?" And they're like, "Well, we just make it up." And I'm like, "Okay, well, at least I'm in good company because that's sometimes what I do." And So I'd be interested to see. Are you going to put? You said you're going to put out cards, or you're not sure at the expo?
Well, it's not up to me. Like I said, it's not my booth.
Oh, it's
But
right. It's not your
if
booth.
I'm going to be watching it a little bit, I'll be like, hey, do you mind if I put a couple of these here? Because the reality is, if I do, I will put prices on them and stuff, and I'll be like, look, most of the stuff I got here, I got a good deal on. If you want to knock a bit off, go ahead. Take the
Yes.
cash. It's fine. I'm not super worried about it. Because if you're going to put it out, you should probably know what you have into it already. That's your
Yeah.
research. That's what you have to understand. It's basic. It's 101,
Yep.
but like because he's a good negotiator. He knows what he's doing. If I walk away, he's got it. He's very experienced at this. So I'm not worried about that. And for me, it's like, no, I'm just going to price him a little aggressively, and then we'll see what happens. I like to go the price it aggressively, and then you can knock off some, and you'll be
You
fine.
can always come down. Yep.
You got some room. It's fine. Jay,
Okay.
a pleasure. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on.
Good to talk to you again, Carlos.